Hi vlog, my name is Marley and today we're going to do a cinematic heroine study on Eva from the movie Shame, shot by Ingmar Bergman in 1968. Liv Ullmann starts in this film with Max von Sydow, and although it is said that this film talks about the war, which I really think is actually has to do with World War II, it has been said by Ingmar and the actors that the war is actually an unnamed civil war that affects the people of Sweden and the people of Norway and the people of Denmark. However, I really don't think that this film is about war. I think that this film is about the collapse of a woman's internal life, and that woman in question being Eva. So, I didn't want to ramble today, so I did a little outline because I ramble. So, why does this film exist? So, I was watching this film and it was hard for me to sit down to watch kind of like a heavy film about war because I typically avoid horror, I typically avoid war films because, we're scared in this world. If I wanted to see horror stories, I will just log on to TikTok. However, I did it. I sat down and I watched it because I really am in my Swedish film era. So I sat down and I watched it. And I was just asking myself, I was just trying to watch the film through the lens of Eva. And at first I played by Liv Ullmann. And at first I guess I saw myself mirrored in her. Like she's like around my age, she suffers the same vulnerabilities that I suffer as a woman in this world. So it was easy for me to see it through that perspective. What I didn't know was that the film actually is told from her perspective. So that was actually pretty surprising for me because in American films, a lot of the times the film is told from the perspective of the man. So it was interesting that for the first time that I didn't have to use my imagination to see the things from the woman's perspective. So as the film opened, it was shown that Liv Ullmann and Max, which are called Eva and Jan, were musicians. They were violinists, classical musicians, and they used to live in Sweden or Norway. It's not told where. But then they moved to this island, the island of Faro, which isn't even named in the movie, by the way. But I know it's the island of Faro because that's where Ingmar Bergman lived for a lot of years because he was like, he was like this genius that wanted to live in isolation. So, so they were like, so a war happened and these violinists couldn't get work and they weren't safe in the mainland. So they went to live in this island in isolation and they made ends meet by like selling like produce and like they had chickens and like, they were just living off the fat of the land, and they were friends with the fishermen who would give them fish, and they were friends with people in town who would give them bread and wine. It was really like kind of medieval vibes. And you follow everything through the lens of Eva. Like she wakes up and it's like before the 1970s, so back in the day, husband and wife used to like even though they were married, they would like sleep in like two separate beds. And that's the opening shot. And it's a pretty flattering shot of Liv Ullmann. But I won't disrespect her because she says her breasts are not actresses. You're gonna have to watch the movie yourself. But it's a really nice opening shot. Like Ingmar really knew how to frame her. So then, you get up and, she starts like fixing breakfast. She opens the windows. She gets up before her husband, Jan. I'm gonna call him Jan, whatever. And then she starts like bathing herself with like this, like there's no sink, there's no running water. There's just like a cloth and she's just washing her pits and all that stuff. And, like I said, typically I would be grossed out, but she's framed very nicely. So it was nice to watch, the power of cinema. However, Jan, like he's just like more slow to get up. Like the contrast is very like whereas she's made to look so beautiful, Like he's kind of like all over the place. He puts on his big binocular glasses. He like touches his big foot, and then she says something like, take your pills, you know? So it's like, it's already established since the first shot that like Jan is like, that Jan isn't really on his game, you know, for good or for bad. And that Eva is. As the day progresses, you see this even more and more. Like, you know, they're at breakfast and I don't know what they're talking about. They're talking about, you know, existential things. But then you see that like Eva is like, okay, let's pile the car up, let's go sell, let's go run our business. And then she gets into the car, and then they put in like the produce into the car, and she's waiting in the car for Jan, and he doesn't come out. So then she runs inside and she finds him crying on the staircase. And she gets really angry and she like slaps him and she's like, get up, stop doing this. And it's really funny to see because, you know, Eva is like, she's like 5'6", 5'7", you know, she's like not a very tall woman, but she's tall enough. But this man is like at least 6'2". So it's like on screen, like the way Ingmar and the cinematographer framed her, they purposely zoom out so that you can see the height difference between the both of them. So then Eva looks like a little small fairy compared to her husband, who looks like a big man. So it's like they really do establish those shots, and then they show you that like it's Eva the one who's pulling everybody up by the bootstraps. Like it's Eva, the engine of the house. So Jan gets it together, and then they get in the car and all that. And then everywhere they go, Eva takes the lead. Eva loads the car, Eva talks to the fisherman, Eva talks to the ferry, because they have to get on the ferry on the hour to go into town with the car. Eva talks to everybody. Like people actually even go up to Eva and talk to her. Like she's because it's like almost like everyone instinctively knows like, oh, she's in charge, not him. And at first it's kind of endearing, right? It's like, you know, the feminist movement. You don't think much of it. You just think like, oh, Jan must be like a sensitive man, a good partner to her, right? However, the problem arises when you realize that like, not only is Jan sensitive, Jan is also a coward, and you see how his cowardice affects her. So as the movie goes along, you know, they're living a relatively peaceful life. You think they're gonna make it. In fact, like they sit down and there's this memorable scene that Ingmar was like, you guys gotta improvise this. And, you know, he focused the camera on Eva, you know, and she's having this monologue about how she's 28 and she wants to have kids before she turns 30, and that she wants Jan to get checked in town because, you know, they can't get pregnant. And then Jan is like, no, wait until after the war to have kids. And then she's like, no, let's just have them now. So then that's the conversation, right? She's like, let's start a family here. She's like hinting. And then, but then right after that scene, all hell breaks loose. Like essentially like the Civil War, like people, like paratroopers start invading. They see a guy that's falling from a parachute that gets like stuck on a tree. And then like the opposition comes in, and then the side that they're supposed to be on comes in, and then the opposition frames Eva. They force her into an interview, and then they doctor the interview to make it seem like she's against like the side that she should be against. So then Jan and her, they get taken into containment. And their name also is Rosenberg. So it was never really specified if Jan had Jewish roots, but like I said, like the implication was that this was, to me, it was World War II. To me, it was World War II. Like the critics say that it was some unnamed war, but to me, it was World War II with like all the hints, you know. So then they get taken into containment, and then Jan gets beat up, and then even in containment, you could see like the selflessness of Eva, like whereas Jan is like very self-absorbed in his pain. I mean, sure, because he got beat up. Like it's kind of like a continuation of what you've always seen. It's like it's very, like, for me, it was very interesting to see like this big strong man just crying all the time, and to see this like woman, this petite woman, like just like muscling her way through life, like, and and literally like both being a mother, a maid, a boss, and an employee to him. Like it was just really like it really did show. And even like when they're detained, you know, she's like trying to take care of everyone else. Like they bring food, she hasn't eaten in like, I don't know, hours, days, and she puts her plate down and she like helps feed like a guy who dislocated his shoulder. She makes sure her husband eats. Like she makes sure everybody eats but her. And then like they like get let go and everybody has eaten a little bit of food except her, and then she leaves, right? So it's just, I think it was really a reflection of how like how women in this society are expected to just kind of front the bill of like the emotional labor for everyone. Like, you know, growing up, it's like I remember like women, we couldn't sit down if there were men in the house. Like we had to get up and like, you know, fix like prepare food, you know? Like it's like it was just rude if somebody comes to the house and like the young women are sitting and laughing and watching TV, like they have to like offer food, they have to like do like a bunch of like emotional labor to like to to just kind of like earn the right to be accepted, you know? And it's just so normalized, right? Like the men are not ever expected to do that. And I really did see that in this movie. And again, even then, it still didn't bother me too much because I was just like, well, in my head, I was like, well, it's clear that Eva has more abilities than Jan. Like Jan breaks down at every corner, right? Jan is like an old Mercedes. Like Eva's like a freaking Jeep Wrangler. She's like a Corolla. Like Eva's like, as they say in Spanish, todo terreno. Like she's all terrain, you know? So I was still rooting for my girl Eva. I was just like, oh, I guess she can handle him. But then it started getting worse. And then the scene that really like the climax, the thing that really made me like realize how bad Eva had it and made me like almost hate Jan, literally, was when I saw how much of her life, of her internal world, the world wanted to take from her. Like not only was the film happy to like make her like the head of the household emotionally, the child bearer, the maid, the servant, the CEO, and the boss. Like not only does she have to carry the burden of everything on her back, on top of it all, the film took more and more from her. So after they got like, you know, taken out of like the detainment, like apparently they got taken out because there's an older man around 60 plus who like pardons them, you know. And I forgot his name, but I think I forgot it as self-defense. But there's this older man who walks with a cane who pardons them. And then, you know, they thank him. They're like, thank you so much. Like he has like a store. He's like a merchant. But then like, you know, I was breathing calmly after they got out of the detainment camp. But then like, or the police station, wherever it was. But then I kind of was like, I realized that like Eva wasn't relaxing. I was like, what's wrong? And then I realized that like, and it's because the man that liberated them from the detainment camp, or the police station, he shows up at their house. And, you know, you can see on Eva's face that she's not happy. And he says, oh, you're not happy to see me, he says. It doesn't matter. Give me some slippers. These shoes need to be warmed up. And then he takes off his shoes and he gives them to her. And I just didn't really understand the relationship between Jan, Eva, and this old man. I didn't understand if this old man was like their dad, if this old man was somebody that they owed a lot to. But then it dawned on me that like if this old man hadn't taken them out of like the containment space where they had been imprisoned, they probably would have been executed. So they're like humoring him in the house. And then he brings wine or he drinks their wine, I don't know. But they're all sitting at the table. And the climax breaks out, the creepiness starts when the man looks at Eva. And again, Eva could be his granddaughter. Like this guy's like at least 70. And he's talking about how like they're probably gonna execute him anyways, like he tells them, but how like grateful they should be because he liberated them. And Eva and John are like, yeah. And then he looks at Eva and then he says, Eva, can I kiss you? And I thought he was gonna kiss her on the cheek, right? But then he like grabs his breasts, he rubs his head against her breasts, and then he kisses her like in a really like violating way. Like I wouldn't say like passionately because there was nothing passionate about it. Like he just imagine just an old man kind of coming and grabbing like a girl that looks like his granddaughter and like kissing her. Like it's like that's just abuse, right? So then he does that in front of Jan, and Jan, like good for nothing, is already like drunk and plastered. And I was just like watching the composition. I was watching Eva sitting there, like she can't refuse this guy because this guy probably has a gun and this guy can order their execution. And then her husband is there, her 6'4" husband is there, as useless as can be, as drunk as can be. And he's okay with some man coming in and like forcing himself upon her. So it's like you could see Eva, like by then she's lost all faith in Jan, like, you know, and then Jan like, and then the worst happens. Like Jan gets like, not only does he not like react to the disrespect of another man like kissing his wife, and Eva doesn't act either, but I think it's because Eva feels outnumbered. I think it's because Eva feels like Jan won't do anything to help her. Like I think that if Jan could have just like thrown a punch his way and blackmailed him and been like, don't come here or I'll come for you, I feel like maybe he and Eva could have had a fighting chance, you know what I mean? And they could have left the island. But of course not. Jan, that would be a proactive person. And it's been shown in the movie that that's not what Jan is. So Jan falls asleep, and then the old man takes Eva to a room and he pulls out like his life savings. And he says to her that like, you know, that he thinks that they're going to execute him. So then he puts the money on the table. And it's implied that he's asking Eva for services. He's asking her to sleep with him in exchange for him not detaining them again. Or he knows that Eva is desperate for money, and in addition to knowing that wronging him could end their freedom, so he coerces her into sleeping with him. And Eva is like, by that point you see how resigned she is. She looks at Jan, and Jan is like drunk, spluttered on the table. Like the only person in the world who could help her is not a help. The only one who can help her is herself, but like at that point she's faced with so few choices that the path of least resistance is to just go along with it for now. So the old man takes her out to the greenhouse and keeps telling his sob story again about how he's gonna get killed. And then, you know, the act happens, you know. We don't see it, thankfully. What we do see is we see Jan wake up. He's waking up. And then I guess Jan peeks into the greenhouse and he sees the act has happened, right? Or is happening. And Jan is such a coward that instead of like going out there and like, you know, protecting his wife, you know, pulling her out of this abyss, he just sits down and starts crying. He does what he does best. By that point, you've lost a lot of faith in Jan, or I lost all faith in Jan. Eva comes out, and then Eva looks at him. She sees him crying, and she literally just says, "Cry if you think it'll help." And then I don't know. And then the old man manifests his death, because immediately the soldiers come, and then the man is like, "Give me my money back, Eva. They said that if you give me my money back, like, I'll live." And then Eva's like, looks at Jan and is like, "Just give him the money back." But by then, Jan has already put the money in his pocket. And then he lies and he says, "Oh, I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't seen no money." And Eva's like, "Jan, just give them the money. Like, don't make this worse." And Jan is like, "No, I don't know what you're talking about." So then the soldiers tear down the entire house, and they don't search Jan. They tear down the entire house. They don't find the money, and they like execute the old man. In fact, they give Jan the gun so that he can execute the old man, because it's almost like the soldiers know that the old man came to their house to sleep with his pretty wife, and they know Jan allowed it. So it's like, it's a pretty synchronistic thing that they're like, okay, well, I guess get your honor back, right? So then they give him back the gun. And Jan is such a coward that like by then, like, you just don't know if Jan is a coward for killing the man, or if he's a coward for how he didn't want to kill the man. It's almost like Jan's like Jan was not a redeemable character at this point. And Eva stares at Jan, and I guess she stares at this man who's like her husband, and you could tell in her eyes that she's like, half of her is like half of her is not loving the fact that he's taking initiative to kill this old guy, miserable guy, but the other half is just kind of like staring at him like I bet you can't even kill him. Like, I bet you're too much of a coward to do that. And then you see Jan literally like shaking. Like, he's not even wearing shoes. Like, he looks like such a coward, really. And then he kills the man. And then you think things are gonna like get a little bit better for them, you know, after Jan having failed Eva so much, and Eva having to take like the burden for everything. Like, in this war, like, you know, it really is shown that like the woman has to take like more suffering than the guy, because it's like, not only does the woman suffer the threat of getting killed, she also suffers the threat of like her dignity being taken away from her, you know, sexually. So it's like the woman loses everywhere she goes, and that's really shown in this movie, right? And I try not to think about those things in my real life, because I feel like that's the version of red pilling woman, you know? It's like a woman is never going to be strong if she goes through life just thinking that she's at a disadvantage. You know, I don't look away from hardship, but I don't like indulge in it, like in my own mental philosophy. And you could tell Eva's the same way. Like, Eva's just pretty unfazed by what goes around her, which is why I related to her so much as a character. However, what happened after the point where Jan became a killer was that not only, like, it kind of took his soul away. Not only was Jan like an emotional burden to Eva, like, after this, he actually starts being abusive towards her, like never before. Like, they're trying to like get everything together and escape, and then Jan like, and then she starts crying, because it's like she's one of those people that like doesn't cry right away. Like, the trauma gets stored in her body, and then she remembers, and then she just breaks down crying. And Jan, instead of doing like the one thing he could do, which is like comfort her, he literally hits her. He literally hits her and knocks her over. And then there's another scene where like he's walking and she trips, and he just keeps walking. And it's like, and then there's another scene where like a young soldier comes, and Eva is trying to like nurture him because he's like a kid, he's like a teenager. And then Jan literally just takes his gun and kills him, and finds out where he was going. And it turns out he was going to the ferry, and he was gonna get a passage to escape the island. And then him and Eva take his place instead. And then the final scene is like, it's just like, before they board the ferry, Eva looks at Jan, and then she says something really beautiful. She says something really hopeful. And Jan like, and Jan's face is like right next to her, and he's like not emotional. Like for all the emotions he showed, like I think the fact that he was not emotional when he needed to be, the fact that he didn't have those feelings present when he needed to have them, the fact that he only had those feelings when it was self-serving for him, showcases how much of like the violence and hardship take from this woman, take from Eva. And it's really relatable, because everybody, regardless of gender, has been there at some point, where you're in a situation where like you think you're dealing with people that care about emotions, that really have really high needs and standards, and you give and you give and you give to protect them, and to protect their traumas, and to protect their emotional burdens. But then like when it comes to like to you realize that like that doesn't exist in them. You realize that you were just there just to give to them. You know, that's something that happens a lot to everybody, really, but let's be real, especially women who have a lot of empathy and emotions to give, or, you know, people that align with the feminine. So Eva realizes, you can tell in Eva's eyes that she realizes this about Jan, but because like life has taken so much from her at this point, and the world is just giving her no safe place to stand. Like, you could have said that, like, maybe back in the day, her safe place was her music. Okay, well, life took that away from her. Then you could say her safe place was her little home in the island with her husband. Okay, life took that away from her. Okay, you could say her safe space was her and her husband. Life took that away from her throughout the movie. So at the end, you kind of just see Eva, like, realizing that, like, her safe space is herself, you know? And you see that she realizes this because she's not hurt by Jan's indifference, you know? She's not really hurt or fazed or surprised when he just gets up coldly. When they're in the boat, and when, you know, they're refugees at this point, when they're sharing like a little bit of bread and cheese to eat, and when they see, like, when they get close to shore and they see like a lot of dead people like floating in the water, when they see that, like, the conductor of the boat commits suicide by sinking himself into the water, when she lays her head next to Jan and Jan is still so cold and emotionless, like, Eva doesn't, by this point, like, you see a woman, you see in her eyes, and you really can, because it's a black and white movie, you see yourself and you see this world reflected in her eyes, and you really see that this woman has comes to terms with the fact that she's going to rebuild her life, and she's going to make it, and it's going to be because of the power of her will, because of the power of her mind. You know, she's not dependent on, she's not the same, I would say the same, you know, cute little girl that started this movie. Like, she is now a woman, a very, very powerful, strong woman who knows that the road ahead of her is very long, but she's okay with it, because at least she's alive, and at least she has the breath in her lungs, and she's going to rebuild. So you really do keep that. So that's why, to me, the movie Shame didn't end in a despair. You know, it didn't traumatize me. And there's a quote that Eva says towards the end. She lays on Jan's chest, and his emotionalist chest, and then she says to her husband, but truthfully, she says to the audience and to herself, because her husband is not there, as you can see by her expressions. She says, "You know, Jan, I had a dream. I dreamt that that I was in a city with roses and a house, and I was holding my daughter, a little girl. I was just holding her very close. And then I saw the roses caught fire, but I wasn't worried, because they were so beautiful. But then I held my little girl, and then I was remembering, I was trying to remember something. I forgot something, but I can't remember what I forgot." And then the movie ends, right? And then, you know, critics have said that means that that's kind of like an allegory for the director saying that, like, you know, they forgot their humanity. You know what I mean? But I have a different interpretation of it, because I view it through the feminine lens, and because I view movies through my point of view in the world. I would say that, like, that literally just meant that she had learned to stop giving a fuck, is what that meant. I think she was a woman that kind of got stripped away from the illusions of girlhood. She learned to see what was true and what was not true. She learned that men weren't going to protect her. She learned that the system was not going to help her. But then she learned that that's okay. That, like, it's okay if the roses burn, because they're so beautiful. Like who cares what they say? Who cares what they do? Like, I can create life. I can build things again and again and again. And even if I don't know or remember how I got there, or what was burdening me, or what's gonna come, like whatever. You know? Like, who cares? Like, I think she just learned to stop giving a damn. That's my interpretation. And I feel like that's what a lot of women have to learn in their life, that, like, you know, you're not a pretty flower that needs to be saved or tamed or domesticated. That's a lie. You're a giver of life. You're a builder of your life, you know? And I think everybody can walk away from that. Like, even if you're a man and you can't give birth or give life, like, you can still give life to things. You can still give life to your work, whether you're an architect, a filmmaker, like whether you're a doctor, you know, like whatever it is, whether you make coffee at Starbucks, like you give life to a latte every day. Like, I think that's the interpretation of the movie. I personally felt stronger after having watched the movie. I do recommend you watch it. It is a trip to watch these movies. And yeah, stick around for the next one. Thank you.